Let's talk about memory forensics. So a couple of the incidents that we've worked at BHIS over the past couple of months, the SOC analysts that we're working with on the other side, they're still very much in this hard drive analysis mode. And that has to do with a whole bunch of security books from years ago that are like, here's how you do hard drive analysis. And here's how you use autopsy. And look, that's a skill. I'm not going to talk about that skill. It's a skill, but a more important skill is how do you actually do memory analysis to figure out what is going on a particular computer system? Because a lot of the malware actually like now resides in memory. Like Joff, you're here. Honestly, dude, do you even want to write to disk if you don't have to?
I avoid writing to disk as much as possible with actual malware, and that you can get it in memory very many different ways. Disk is potentially the kiss of death, right? Because that's as soon as you get something on disk, a tool can analyze it and do stuff with it. So we try to avoid that if possible.
So we had a customer, or we have a customer that we're working with right now, where they had a whole bunch of systems that were compromised, and they're like, "We've got all the hard drive images. Do you want to start going through them?" I'm like, "No, I do not wish to do that. I choose to pass on that activity." And if you're looking at the memory analysis, it's not that hard. Now, the main tool that you're going to use for this is volatility. The cool thing about volatility is that it is the de facto tool for doing memory analysis, and they have the ability for it to run on Mac, on Windows, on Linux computer systems. It also has the ability to ingest a wide variety of different memory images. So you want to get familiar with this and actually going through and practicing doing memory and analytics and getting used to looking at those processes, those network connections. I usually recommend starting with network connections and working backwards from there. Now, let's get, it's time for real talk with John Strand. Memory analysis is a train wreck, folks. If you get into it and you're basically like, hey, a bunch of these modules don't work, that's normal. That's the way that usually happens. That's not a bad thing per se, but it's something that you need to be aware of. For example, if you're running volatility on a modern Windows 10 computer system and you run NetScan to look at all the network connections, you're going to see that all of the processes that are Windows processes have nice process IDs and the process names. Hooray! Anything that's not, it gives you a dash. Just says, hey, there's a network connection to port 80 on some site. Who's opening that connection? I don't know. What's the process ID? Couldn't help you. It's horrible, all right? But it is what it is. It's one of those phrases that I keep hearing on both sides of the aisles these days. But it's still key for you to be able to look at the memory from a computer system. And there's a number of ways that you can pull the memory. You can dump the memory with tools like WinPMem. That's great. You can actually go through and you can pull the memory. It's funny, there's a video using memory forensics and security investigations volatility. I actually have a link to that in just a couple of slides. So well done, Hishan XP, well done. You can pull memory using WinPMem. You can pull the memory using FTK Imager. And if you're working on a server, you can actually do a snapshot, and you can pull suspended state files and snapshot files, and you can mount those with volatility as well. So it's an amazing utility. It's an amazing group of people behind it. And we should all get familiar with it. And if every SOC analyst knew at a core how to take the memory and do some quick analysis with that memory, it would make our jobs so much easier. I also recommend you go learn. Now, this is good news and this is bad news, okay? The good news is there's lots of memory images for you to practice on. Lots. You have Windows XP images, Windows 7 images, Windows 7 images. Crap. You see a theme? There's not a lot of Windows 10 images. And that has a lot to do with what Microsoft did with actually the symbolic linking and the mapping tables. They stopped sharing those, and then they started it back up, and then they stopped, and then they started it back up. So Windows 10 is a bit of a nightmare whenever you're trying to do analysis on these things as well. So you have a lot of memory images that you can practice with. They will not be the most up-to-date, but you're going to get familiar with what the tool itself actually does and what the different modules like DLL list, PS list, NetScan, NetStat on some older versions of Windows. You're going to get familiar with these different modules, how they run, and how to actually do an investigation on them as well. Now, I provided a bunch of links here in the slides. So when you're looking at these links, there are all kinds of links to webcasts that I've done in the past. There's webcasts to the volatility ones as well. That one is in there. That one's in there as well. So I'm giving you links that you can actually start to learn this. Now, some of the stuff is going to be outdated. Like I said, in volatility, if you're running NetStat, it's not going to give you the right data. PS tree may not work on some versions, but that's okay. And I want to explain why that's okay. Whenever you're doing SOC work, when you're doing anything in security, knowing the limitations of your tools is one of the most important things that you can learn. And this becomes key, especially if you ever get in front of a judge and a jury. If a tool doesn't behave the way that you expect it to, and you've experimented, you've played with it, you've hit that wall before an investigation that ends up in court, good day for you. That's awesome. Congratulations. If the first time you play with the tool, you run into these problems and you don't understand these problems, you've never seen these problems before, and you're on an investigation that's going to end up in court, that's going to suck. So let's practice with this stuff before we actually get involved with an actual incident. The other thing I would recommend is if you're working in a SOC, and if you're a SOC manager, I guess this is a request for SOC managers, don't overtax your SOC analysts, okay? SOC analysts need free, unstructured playtime to work with these tools, to get familiar with these tools and how these tools actually work. So you shouldn't be stocking your SOC and saying everybody in the SOC is working 5-day work weeks. We have the night shifts, we have the weekend shifts. You should probably be staffing at 4-day work weeks. And you should be setting it up so SOC analysts can play with memory forensics, they can play with hard drive images, they can create challenges for each other. That's one of the ways that you can actually deal with SOC burnout and make it so it's not as bad of an issue. Almost every organization I've worked with that has massive SOC burnout is pushing every SOC analyst to the absolute limit of what they can do. And we run into this too. At BHIS, we're standing up HTOC and SOC services. You know, it's tough standing these things up. It absolutely is. But we need to recognize that burnout and start dealing with it before it actually becomes a catastrophic issue.